Let's take a look at a family law filing. This one is for the statewide application in Florida, and we'll highlight some of the interesting ways that Turbo Courts helps people to prepare and file their documents in a family law filing. In this situation, it will be a divorce with children and property. First off, we walk the filer through why they're here. In this case, I'm here to start a case to get a divorce as opposed to answering the petition for dissolution. We provide them with a detailed list of what they're going to need to file their case, along with the requirements that they must meet. This allows them to indicate whether or not they meet all of the state and local requirements before proceeding, so that they don't spend a lot of time filling out this questionnaire only to find out that they're in the wrong jurisdiction, for example. Okay, let's move forward to the family information section. So the filer is Stephanie, and she lives at 100 Main Street in Fort Myers. The other party is Jeff, and he lives at another address. Now, one of the things that TurboCourt does is allows you to reuse information that you've already provided. So if it turned out that they live together, I could simply say that he lives at the same address and I'm done. But I'm going to indicate no, they're already separated. He lives at another address. He lives on Silver Avenue. Jumping ahead to the marriage information page, we're seeing the date of marriage, and they are separated, so they've provided their date of separation. Now, if she had inadvertently indicated that the date of separation occurred before the date of marriage, which just doesn't make any sense, and tries to proceed, TurboCourt will stop, highlight the issue in red, and indicate what the problem is specifically. The date cannot be before 1/1/1980, which you've listed as your marriage date. So one of those dates is incorrect and needs to be changed. Family status. So are there dependent and or minor children, or still in high school between the ages of 18 and 19? Are you pregnant? And so forth. One of the things you'll notice at the top of the screen is that all of these sections are activated. I've already filled this out to speed through the demonstration, and all of these sections happen to be active, and I've answered them. But what if there were no children, and what if I'm not pregnant? When I hit next, you'll notice that all of the sections related to children are deactivated. They're not relevant to me. And as with all of the TurboCourt applications, the pages, the sections, even the questions will dynamically change based on the way I'm responding to the earlier questions. But let's go back and say that in fact, yes, we do have children. Okay, jumping ahead, you'll see that we do of course ask about spousal support. Let's take a look at the children section. In this situation, I've indicated there's only one child, Nancy, and she's a part of this particular procedure because she's either a minor common to both parties or whatever these other choices are that are appropriate for this jurisdiction, in this case for Florida. And some additional information about this child, Nancy, and if I were to indicate that her date of birth was in 1980, the program will say she's not a minor and there's something wrong. So let's go ahead and correct that. Jumping down to who the primary physical custodian is, who does Nancy live with now? She lives with Stephanie, or with Jeff. We know they're separated from what we responded to earlier. It could be somebody else, in which case I'll provide information about them, or I could say I don't know. Maybe Nancy, 16, 17 years old, left home, and frankly, I don't know where she is. Now, the reason it knows to list Stephanie and Jeff separately is because we indicated that they don't live together. Well, let's go back to that family info section and say that Jeff, in fact, does, let me just highlight that, still live with Nancy, or excuse me, with Stephanie. Now, when we go to the children section and we look at the primary physical custodian, notice that Stephanie and Jeff are no longer listed separately. The choice is both parents or somebody else, and I don't know. So again, the program dynamically understands what is a meaningful selection based on how I previously answered the earlier questions. But let's go back and indicate that they are, in fact, in separate locations now. They're separated. And we're back to Stephanie again. Let's take a look now at the children's residence history. Now, this is the federal requirement of providing 5 years of residence history. And TurboCord is very smart about the way it collects this information, and it's particularly helpful if you've got many children. Maybe they don't all have the same residence history and so forth. So let's just take a look at this one child. So we've got Nancy. She was born January 1st, 1998. She currently lives with Stephanie at this address. And when did Nancy start living there? Well, it turns out she's actually lived there ever since she was born, 1998. That's clearly more than 5 years, so there's no additional information that the courts need. But what if, in fact, she's only lived there since 2012? Well, now we know that you haven't provided us with 5 years of residence history. So where did she live before this? So once again, whatever addresses I've already provided, I could reuse, or I could say another address. Let's just keep this simple, and we'll select whatever address we've selected here. When did she start living there? That was since the date of birth. Who did she live with at that address? And now we have both parents. And TurboCord lets us proceed because it knows that we've now collected 5 years residence history. Well, what if the child is only 3.5 years old? Well, TurboCord is smart enough to know that it only needs to collect 3.5 years of residence history. What if the child is 17 and for a period of about 6 months we didn't know where she lived? She left home and we didn't know where she lived. That's okay. You can indicate for that 6-month period you didn't know where she lived. TurboCord is able to handle all of those different scenarios. Let's jump ahead to Section 7, Child Custody and Time Sharing. You'll notice that there are quite a number of pages here. You can indicate that you have in fact agreed on parenting arrangements, and the arrangements are as follows. Several choices, and again, these are per Florida rules. You can indicate that you want to develop a parenting plan that should be adopted by the court as opposed to having the court establish a parenting plan. And then there are many things to indicate: school designations, scheduling, extracurricular activities, the weekday and weekend schedules, the holiday schedule. We can take a quick look at that. There's many different ways of capturing this information. It could be a large multi-line box where you simply type in a paragraph of how you want it to be. In Florida, they ask it to be very specific. You indicate the holiday, you indicate the parent, you indicate which years, and so forth. Transportation, how the exchange is going to be happening, any foreign or out-of-state travel, communication between the parents and with the children, childcare, and so forth. So It's a very detailed section. Jumping ahead to Section 8, the financial affidavit. Here again you've got very detailed information about Stephanie and then Jeff, what sort of income they have, what sort of assets they have, what sort of deductions they have, expenses. So she's indicated that she has household expenses. Obviously she'd have more than just telephone and food and home, but just to give you an idea. And then you provide the telephone and food and home. What sort of automobile expenses do you have? Because she previously indicated she's got automobile expenses, so gas and some payments. And so what are you paying for that? One of them is an estimate, one of them is actual, and you go through that process. Same thing with assets and liabilities. Who has assets? Who has liabilities? How do you want to divide them? And then let's jump ahead to Section 10, child support. In Florida, they asked us to actually calculate the child support amount to the penny based on all of the financial information and other details that have been provided. Now, one of the key pieces to that formula is how much time do the parents spend with the child. So in this case, how much time is the father, Jeff, spending with the child? So every week, every 2 weeks, every month, every year, Jeff spends X number of overnights. So we've said every week Jeff spends 2 nights. And then TurboCourt takes a look at all of the information previously provided and says, okay, Jeff is the one who's going to be paying for child support, and this is the dollar amount that he's going to be paying. Now, if I start changing income amounts or other key details that affect this formula, this number will change. So for example, let's just take a quick look at, well, what happens if I have our daughter stay with him 3 nights a week? Well, all of a sudden, the support payment goes down to just over $300, a significant change. No, that's not going to work for me. 2 nights is good enough. Finally, we go through some additional questions, the final review, everything is good to go, and now TurboCourt will, as always, analyze all of my responses and generate all of the forms that I need, in this case for filing a divorce with children with property. And as you will see, we generate many, many forms in Florida. Let's take a quick look at one of those forms. So here is the petition for dissolution. This is the Florida state form. And as you can see, fields are populated, boxes are checked, dates are filled in. This is a multi-page form. Marital assets and liabilities, spousal support, the parenting plan, child support, and so on. So based on whatever your forms include, we would adapt TurboCourt to populate your forms.